Thanks so much. Senator Richard, you've been patient, but Senator Stabenow has been patient as well on the WebEx. If you don't mind, I'm going to let her go first, and then you're immediately right after her. Thank you for your patience. All right, Senator Stabenow, you're there?
I am, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to Senator Ernst. I appreciate so much working with her on these issues, and I appreciate very much you're doing this hearing. I want to take just a step back, way back for a moment, and kind of frame this as I think this has been framed as big refiners, small refiners, and so on. This is really about whether we're going to continue the dirtiest kind of fuel or have cleaner fuels. And if you go back 100 years, actually Henry Ford and Thomas Edison first tried to do a vehicle with a battery, but could not get public support, government support to help them create the innovation. And 2 years later, the biggest permanent tax credits for oil and gas were embedded in our federal tax code, and they've been there 100 years. And so when folks thought we at that time picked a winner and they won. And so now we're trying to just balance that out with giving opportunities to biofuels, electric vehicles, wind, solar, and so on, all of which start and stop. It is not a consistent policy. It's not embedded in the tax code. And so I want to ask Ms. Gore, when we look at from a business standpoint, the importance of policy and regulatory certainty when you're making investment decisions, innovation decisions, and so on. How important is that?
Thank you for the question, Senator. That's incredibly important. I think there's a very good example in terms of my industry is producing right now cellulosic biofuel. All right, that is up to 100% and beyond in terms of the GHG reductions, but we're not getting credit for it because the technologies have been pending EPA review for over 5 years. So we as a nation, we are leaving carbon reductions on the table, and then the impact is you have innovators sitting on the sidelines because they see a lack of certainty, a lack of a marketplace moving forward, and therefore they're going to sit this one out. So it really does stifle the innovation, the investment that we need to continue to bring down the carbon intensity of corn ethanol, which we are doing a great job of doing that, and also to be able to get our industry to net zero and participating in the hard-to-electrify space. And that's a place where we're going to be able to perform as a really important feedstock.
Thank you. And just one more time for the record, do biofuels, our biofuels, responsible for high gas prices?
No, quite the opposite. The more biofuels that we introduce into the fuel supply, the more we bring down the price at the pump for every driver.
Thank you. And it's also jobs, right, in rural America, certainly in rural Michigan. So one other question I have to ask as somebody who not only is a supporter of biofuels and rural jobs, but also electric vehicles being made in my great state. Both are important to reducing carbon emissions in the transportation sector. And I think it's important, just for the record, to say that's why the United Auto Workers, who make great automobiles and the new electric vehicles, strongly support the renewable fuel standard as well. In fact, the UAW is the largest private union in Iowa, with members employed by companies making farm equipment, and they consistently talk about the fact that that they are supportive. So, Ms. Gore, does Growth Energy agree that both electric vehicles and biofuels are critical to reducing carbon emissions and petroleum use?
Yes, let me add that we appreciated UAW submitted very strong remarks to EPA in support of a robust RFS. We have very ambitious climate goals, and there is no one-size-fits-all solution. We're going to need every tool in the toolbox, which means biofuels alongside electrification. The benefits of biofuels, those are going to be for the immediate, the mid, and the long term. In the immediate term, we have about 270 million cars on the road today. So biofuels allow us to have a solution for those cars, to bring down the emissions, to clean up the emissions, and do it so affordably and in an available way for all consumers. In the mid to long term, if we are a strong industry today, that allows us to have the innovation that we are continuing to do to further drive down the carbon intensity of our low carbon fuel, but also participate into the hard to electrify space. For that, we need accurate carbon modeling, and we need to make sure that the incentives provide a fair, level playing field for all of the parties who want to be able to compete and participate.
Thank you. I agree. And Mr. Chairman, I will yield back and yield to my friend from Iowa, Senator Ernst.